thing to keep in mind with these toxic leadership situations is because things feed into each other in that way, it's not always intentional behavior. One of the things I talk about a lot in my book is that you have to be aware of what your actions do to other people, right? Perspective taking, putting yourself in their shoes. If you have a leader who's just unaware of what's going on, you now have a toxic environment that's self-reinforcing just out of obliviousness. And it's not because this person's a bad person. We're not talking about a potential Stalin or a Hitler. We're just talking about someone who has their head in the sand and doesn't get it. Here's an example. I worked with a leader who called a super early morning meeting for their facility. It was a healthcare facility. So we're talking 3 shifts, right? Because people don't just get sick from 9 to 5. They show up at the hospital at all times. Well, this person called a super early morning meeting so that the third shifters could be there and the people could also come in early for their work. And this was scheduled 6 weeks in advance. People took care of daycare. People took care of their families. People that were third shift figured out how long they were going to stay there. All of this. And the night before, she canceled it because she wanted to be there for her kid's first day of school. Now, on the surface, this doesn't seem like a bad thing, right? Who doesn't want to be there for their kids? But she never stopped to think that all of these people might have wanted to be there for their kids too. And that they had made arrangements to be there with her. And then she was just like, oh, no, not doing it. This created a loss of morale. And some people left because of it, because of her blindness, because of her lack of awareness. And she was shocked. She was confused. She didn't understand. A lack of awareness can be just as damaging as maliciousness or negligence. So when we talk about this toxic workplace of umbrella, right, it's not necessarily going to be the boss that bangs on the desk and that is screaming and yelling at people and hiring and firing people. I mean, the kind of egregiousness that you see like in the movies. It could very well, and it probably is, someone who's actually a good person. But because they don't tap into their empathy first to begin to understand and connect with their people, they do things that really cut their own knees out from under them, and they don't even realize it. One question I get a lot is, can you work in a toxic work environment? You can. People do. I did. I had to stay in mine for almost 7 years before I could get out. But if you can, it is always better to get out. Make an escape plan. Even if you can't get out right away, start making the plan to be able to leave. Not only does this preserve your mental health and the fact that these kind of environments usually bleed over into every other aspect of your life, right? You have no weekend because you're spending all weekend long laying on the couch trying to get prepared for the next week of hell. You don't even get a decent commute in the morning because you're hoping that you would get into a wreck rather than get there. That's what I would do. I can remember it very clearly, wishing to get into a wreck so that I didn't have to go to work. It affects your relationships. It affects your energy. It affects your mental health. If you can, try to get out. Think of it this way. If you take a plant and you put it in hard dirt and you don't water it and you don't feed it, that plant might survive for a while, but eventually it's going to wither up. And that's exactly what happens to us as people. You've got to be able to nourish yourself in these environments. And if these environments are holding you back and holding you down, you can't do that. At least not from that environment. You're not going to blossom. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. But you're never going to be nurtured, and you're probably not going to flourish. And over time, people become bitter. They become angry. That's not the life anybody wants.